Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey everyone, how are you? You're all in Arizona, eh?
Yep.
I'm
Well,
calling
they're
in
all muted.
from Los Angeles, from Beverly Hills, California. It's
David,
nice to
I'll
see you all.
introduce you properly and then I'm going to spotlight you so everyone will see you fully over the screen.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, I want to just thank everyone for joining today and for joining in the past virtual gatherings that we've been doing every day. Today we have a very special guest that we're honored to have with us today. Just to share a little bit about David Sachs, for those of you who have not heard of him yet or have not seen any of his shows that he's written for in Hollywood. So, David Sachs was born and raised in New York City. He attended Harvard College, graduating with a degree in government. And while he was there, he began his comedy writing career as an editor of the school's humor magazine, the Harvard Lampoon. Upon graduating, David moved to Los Angeles and began writing for television. And among the shows, which is what we've highlighted in the email, that he's written for and worked on are The Simpsons, where he won an Emmy Award, and Third Rock from the Sun, for which he won a Golden Globe Award. Murphy Brown and Empty Nest. David is the co-founder and senior lecturer of the Happy Minyan of Los Angeles, which is actually a very well-known synagogue in Los Angeles. My brother is the one who actually, I'm going to say, made me aware of David Sachs. And when you search his name, that's something that comes up before his other writing accolades to a degree, which is pretty cool in my opinion. A lot of us get lost in the Hollywood glamour, but it shows his value. So again, he's a senior lecturer and co-founder of the Happy Minyan of Los Angeles. And David is married and he raises his family in Beverly Hills, California. So thank you so much, David. I'm going to turn the mic over to you. And if we have questions or anything else, we'll interrupt at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Rabbi, before we sort of jump in, can you just give me a sense for how long we have together?
Well, first of all, it's up to you, but typically I say 25 to 30 minutes of a presentation and then you can do Q&A, but really it's up
Okay,
to you.
that sounds great. That sounds great. So we'll stick to the format. So anyway, as you know, I write comedy for television, and I also I love Torah, I love Hashem, I love Judaism, I love it all, and I love life. I love being alive, and to me, it's so important to basically just make the most out of life. So one of the, I just want to connect it, just philosophy of life and kind of what we're all going through and everything like that, especially now, and also connected to Judaism and things like that. And I thought one of the things that I'd like to discuss, and I'm happy to take any questions and all the rest. So I want to sort of like hear what you guys are thinking about, and have a discussion with you all. But one of the things that I wanted to discuss was just the what happiness, just different ideas about happiness and laughter and things like that. And when you start to sort of like study Torah and get into some of the deeper sources, you realize that that it's a great mitzvah to be happy. And what is happiness exactly? Because I think that if we sort of like give a more sort of secular or conventional definition of the term, we tend to think that happiness is walking around with a big smile on your face and laughing and everything like that, and being in a great mood and all the rest. And that's certainly not incorrect. That's not inconsistent with Torah. But the Torah is saying actually something deeper about happiness, that happiness actually is an expression of expanded consciousness. So let's figure out what that means for a moment. Happiness is an expression, or it's a vehicle to, it's a direct road to expanded consciousness. So now we have to figure out what's expanded consciousness and why do I want it? Okay. It's a great term, but what is it? So expanded, have you ever been in a great mood and then something goes wrong? Like someone spills something on you, or you get a stain, or, you're writing something and your pencil breaks, or you're driving someplace and you get a traffic ticket and you don't care? Have you ever experienced that? Things don't go exactly the way you want. Something that normally you would get kind of like annoyed about, maybe even angry, maybe even yell or curse or something like that. And you don't care. And why don't you care? Because at that moment, you're in touch with the big picture. And then it's sort of like, this little thing, whatever it is. So that would be the way I would describe expanded consciousness. It's when you're in touch with the greater reality. Now, let me give you maybe a nice way of just visualizing that, because that sounds a little esoteric, a little abstract. The greater reality. What is the greater reality? Okay. So let me describe it to you this way. So I once imagined a conversation between two fish. Okay. So this is two fish talking. And one fish says to the other fish, "Do you believe in water?" And the other fish says, "I don't know if I believe in water. My grandfather was very religious. He believed in water." Right? Okay, so that's the end of the conversation. So what's the joke? The joke is that the only thing that exists is water. That's the only thing that's going on is water. And yet you have these two great intellectual fish, right? They're thinking, they're philosophizing, they're intellectualizing. Do you think water exists? I don't know. Do you think water exists? Right? So we're the fish. Do you understand? We're the fish, and all around us is Hashem. That's the only thing actually that exists in the world. If we want to get real deep fast, the only thing that actually exists is God, right? So we're the fish in water. And yet, how many people wonder, like, what's going on? I was having lunch with a friend a while back, and I asked him, "Where'd you park your car?" He says, "Across the street." I said, "Do you realize you can't get to your car without swimming through godliness?" Right? See, this is expanded consciousness. This is what expanded consciousness means. And when we live in this reality, which is the ultimate reality, then things don't really bother us that much, right? And one of the ways that you can get there is through what we call simcha. Simcha, right? The word sameach, which is the word simcha, different form of the word simcha. Sameach is the same word as Mashiach. Do you know that? That level of joy, that level of expanded consciousness. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. They say Rebbe Nachman of Breslov would play games with God. What does that mean, play games with God? When he was a little boy, he would walk into shul, and he would give tzedakah. He would put money in the pushka, like no one was in shul. He was all alone, and he would talk to God, and he would pray to God, and he would say all these prayers over the tzedakah that he was about to give, and then he'd give the tzedakah, and then he'd start to walk out of shul, and he'd go, "Oh, I don't remember if I gave any tzedakah yet." Like he was playing like it was like a game. So then he'd say, "Oh, I have to go back," and he'd go back, and he'd say all these prayers again, right? And all these things to God again, and he'd give another coin to tzedakah, and then he'd start to walk out and go, "Wait, I don't remember if I gave anything." There's a certain intimacy that we have to have with God, a certain playfulness, like a certain sense that God is your best friend. That doesn't mean that we have any less yira shamayim or any less respect for God. But you should know that the Torah refers to God in many, many different ways. One is as a best friend, one is as a king. We know about king, we know about father, but the Tanakh refers to God in many different ways. Do you know one of them is even as a big sister? Do you know that that even is in the Torah? God as big sister, God as mother. God, what about Shir Hashirim, right? The Song of Songs by King Solomon. Rabbi Akiva says that's the Holy of Holies. You ready for this? That's God as lover. We even have God as twin, our twin. Can you imagine? What sense does that make? How can God created the entire universe? Compared to God, I'm nothing. What do you mean I'm God's twin? So, but the answer is very deep. Listen to this. The idea is that, you know, how many times have you heard this in your life, or maybe you've even experienced this, unfortunately, where someone who's quote unquote religious does something that you really don't like something that gives God a bad name, God forbid. And then the person walks away from that encounter with the religious person and going, I don't think much of God, right? That's called a chilul Hashem. That's like a real no-no in Judaism, where you give God a bad name. Now let's think about that for a moment. Because that process, it's very familiar to us. We're all familiar with the idea of it. But if you think about it, it's very illogical. God creates the entire universe. Who is this poor schlub? This poor schlub is a nothing. And yet, people confuse his behavior with God. And they'll even make a judgment about God based on this person. Now, do you understand what it means that us and God are twins? Because in the mind of many people, the way we behave and the way we understand God are inseparable. Okay, that's the bad part. Let's do the good part now. The good part is you can give the master of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, a good name. Can you imagine? God does everything. And me, a nothing. I'm nothing. I can say something or do a chesed, a favor for someone. I can give someone some tzedakah, or I could give someone something, whatever, a good word. And then they leave that encounter thinking more highly of God. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you realize now that joy, happiness, is a gateway to this idea of understanding that there's more to the world than what's in front of our eyes. You know, that idea took over the whole world at a certain period of time. It was called the Enlightenment. That was a big stage in human history around the 1700s. In religious circles, we call it the Haskalah. And it's really not a new thing to the 1700s. It's going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, right? If you can't see it with your eye, if it's not on a 1 + 1 = 2 level, if it's not rationally based or our understanding of rationality, then it's not real. But do you know something? You know, Louis Pasteur, right? Like we have the concept of something being pasteurized. We boil milk, pasteurized milk. You'll open up your refrigerator, you'll see the name of Louis Pasteur, only it's hiding in the word pasteurized. What did he do? Well, he said there are all these microbes hiding in your milk that can kill us. And you know, the townspeople, the local French townspeople said, ha, 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 you mean there's something that I can't see with my eyes that's dangerous? They wanted to make him the idiot. You understand? Now we know, of course you need a microscope or a subatomic microscope to see something. What about things in the heavens? Just because you can't see them with your eye, it means that they don't exist? Math and physics now postulate dimensions that we can't see. We're not talking about Kabbalah here. We're talking about physics and math. You understand, the whole world is catching up to the idea that there's more to the world than we can see with our eye. That's expanded consciousness. Science is still catching up with Torah, right? And the way that we gain access to all these realms is through Torah, is through mitzvahs, is through an acknowledgement and a belief and an understanding that it's all already there. You know, there are a lot of people, I call this bad math. You ready for some bad math? People think God is as close to me as I can feel his presence. Let me say it one more time. This is what I call bad math. God is as close to me as I can feel his presence. You know what? God is closer than close to you, whether you can feel his presence or not. I'll give you another version of this. A lot of people think that they, with their great belief, they create the existence of God. You know what? Even if a person doesn't believe in God, he's still there. God never goes away. And God's existence is not contingent on our belief in him. He's there either way. Okay, I've thrown a lot of ideas out at you. I'm happy to discuss any questions or anything like that. But the bottom line is be happy. Be happy. And through that, all sorts of blessings come your way.
So David, I'm going to jump in. First of all, that's awesome. I love that message. Can you share a little bit of how that message plays into your writing and how you sort of ended up on this road? Because I know you wanted to go into government. It seems like in the end you became a writer.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know I had a creative side growing up, and I kind of discovered it when I was at Harvard. I was writing for the humor magazine there, and I thought, wow, this is really fun. This seems like so much more fun than being a lawyer. I'll try to do this. And in terms of how this message that I'm speaking about today figures into my writing life, my professional writing life, well, I can tell you that writing for Hollywood is a very unstable profession. There are a lot of ups and downs all the time. Lots of just unpredictability, massive unpredictability. And how do you stay sane in an environment like that? Well, you've got to connect to the true reality. And when you connect to the true reality, which is the fact that there's a God, that he's good, that he's always there, then you have a rock, you have a foundation. And, you know, the vicissitudes of daily life, of business, you know, they can still get to you. We're all human beings, but not as much, I'll tell you.
So I'm going to do 2 follow-ups on this. And then I'm hoping just everyone else, if you don't mind putting your questions in the comments. I see Morty, you had a question, but let me just do these 2 follow-ups and then you'll jump in on that. So 2 things. When I did hear about you from my brother, one of the things that he mentioned was in your talk to the group in California, you had mentioned how as you became more observant and religious in the sense of practices, how that intersected with your Hollywood, I don't know if it was gigs or opportunities. And then, of course, how did you get started into Hollywood? I know so many people that moved to California hoping to get an opportunity, and the door just doesn't open for them.
Well, in terms of getting that first job, I was very fortunate. I started writing for television when I was 21. I got a 3-week trial period on a TV show on HBO. It was called Not Necessarily the News. Maybe some of you may or may not remember that show. And that was in 1984. And now, can you imagine? That was a 3-week trial period, and now it's 36 years later. Isn't that something? Um, I connected with someone who was a graduate of the Harvard Lampoon. Let's hear it for connections, right? Who was able to get my writing sample to the producer of this show, and the producer liked it enough to offer me and my then partner this 3-week opportunity. And in terms of reconciling keeping Shabbos, I keep Shabbos, and working in Hollywood. Well, when I first decided that that's what I wanted to do, I had already been working out in Hollywood for about 2.5 years. I was 24 at the time. I'm 57 now. And I told them that I wanted to start keeping Shabbos. And they said, you're fired. If you do, you're fired. And not only that, but my management told me you'll never work in television again. It's a whole story. If you're interested in the whole story, I actually travel around the world telling this story. You can go on YouTube and you look up Sojourns in Hollywood. There's a whole hour-long talk on it. The fullness of this story.
I'll find it and put it in the chat.
Yeah, I gave that one in South Africa. That was in Cape Town. You'll see it. But anyway, the bottom line is, I stood my ground, and God blessed me, and it all worked out. I saw there's a famous quote. I wish I remember who said it, which is that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So anyway, I didn't know that quote at the time, but in my heart, I knew nothing bad was going to happen from keeping Shabbos. I might have to find a whole nother job and a whole nother career, but I knew in my heart nothing bad was going to happen from keeping Shabbos.
Thank you. Now, Morty, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, okay. Not only one question, I got about three. Were you born in Canada?
No.
Are you Canadian?
No.
Okay, because when your first words that you said, you're in Arizona, eh? That's Canadian.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing was yesterday, I was at my cardiologist. I wasn't there, I was at home. We were doing it online. And I was telling him that I fall asleep constantly. I could fall asleep on a chair in front of a television. He says, if you don't wake up, call me.
Ha, I like it.
I see people laughing, Yeah. You also mentioned something else about keeping Shabbos. My grandson is an immigration lawyer in Canada, and he was apprenticing at a place. They phoned him up one Sunday and said, Adam, we want you to come work with us full time. He says, I have conditions. She said, you have conditions? There are 10 people waiting for this job. He says, my conditions are I will not work on the Jewish holidays or Shabbos. She says, we'll have to ask somebody else. The following day, she phoned him up and said, Adam, you got the job.
Beautiful.
This is Hashem talking,
Yeah, for sure. It's beautiful.
I thought
for
it's Morty
sure.
talking.
What's that?
I thought it's Morty talking.
No. Yeah, well, Hashem. I'm a twin with Hashem.
Yeah. Okay, Morty.
Yes.
You get bonus points for that one. You finished strong.
Well, I can finish even stronger. I can tell you a joke. I love telling jokes. There was these two friends. Could I tell this?
You got to ask David. It's his show.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Okay. These two friends that met in kindergarten, and there was Chaim Cohen and Eliezer. They grew up, and they stayed friends for years and years and years. Chaim Cohen became an Uber driver. Eliezer became a handyman, and And one day, Chaim McCoy's wife called to Eliezer and says, "You know what?" She says, "Whenever a bus comes by my house, my cupboard door opens up. Could you fix that?" He says, "Sure, yes." He says, "I'll come over this afternoon." He comes over. He says, "I'm going to go into the closet." He says, and we'll see what happens. Anyway, while he's in there, Chaim McCoy comes home. He's going to hang up his coat. He sees Eliezer there. He says, "What are you doing in the closet?" He says, "Waiting for a bus."
Waiting, wait, you broke up at the end there. Waiting for a bus?
Yeah, yeah. "What are you doing in the closet?" "Waiting for a bus." That's it.
Very good. I like it.
I see Lori, you had a question, Lori Steen?
Yes, David, see, I don't see you.
Well, I'll
Yeah, you know
spotlight
something?
David. Hold on.
Before you say your thing, Morty, can I tell you something serious about your joke?
Hold on, there you go.
Yeah,
So-
sure. Tell me.
So, you know, in the Torah, I'll make this fast, but it's just like a PS for your joke, just something interesting. You know the whole laws of the sota, where the sota has been in private with a married woman, or a married woman has been in private, and
Okay.
so sometimes it could be that a married woman is isolated with a man, maybe even one that she's been warned against, but she's genuinely innocent. How
Yes,
can
of
she
course.
prove her innocence? Like,
Yeah.
what could be more suspicious than a guy hiding in the closet when you
Yeah, of
walk
course,
home?
absolutely, for sure.
And then you ask him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm waiting for a bus."
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the essence of the whole joke.
But I'm telling you, I'm being serious about it right now. I understand the joke. Now we're moving on to Torah. So,
Right, very good. Yeah,
so
yeah.
what I'm trying to tell you is one of the levels of the sota is that in an instance where no one would believe her, this woman, that she really is innocent, she has a way to prove her innocence. Do you understand? Because things like that happen too in life. Life is very complicated. Okay, anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Yes,
right, Lori.
David. Hi, David. A couple
Hi, how are you?
questions. I'm good, thank you. Do you happen to know Joe Lazarov?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. I don't know why I can't see you.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay,
click
there.
on
The
my-
other question is, I have a friend who's interested in writing scripted TV. Can I have him contact you?
Yes, you can have him email me through the rabbi.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, any other questions, Laura? Well, first of all, what is the since she mentioned about writing, what is the typical in for that? You have to send your writing.
There is no typical in.
So what is it? You throw it and see where it sticks?
It's a very mysterious process breaking into Hollywood.
You have a question in the chat that someone wants to know the significance of the pictures or the picture behind you.
Oh, okay. So right now I'm in like a little office in my house, and it's a very drab background. It's just like a window. And I noticed that on Zoom you can put in a background. And so I was fortunate enough to be invited to a wedding in Buenos Aires a few months ago. So my wife and I went down to Buenos Aires, and this is a picture from the wedding grounds. And I thought, well, why don't I put something that's kind of outdoorsy and attractive? And now whenever I come onto Zoom, it just comes up automatically. So, but I'll tell you, every time I look at it, it makes me happy, you know? All right, Rabbi, see, it's 1 p.m. We started at 12:30. You said 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm going to sign off because I got a script to write. So I'm going to wish you
Should we
all
see if there's any
best.
one last question?
I'm sorry?
Should we see if there's any one last question?
If there's one more question, yeah. And before we take that, I'm going to give you an advertisement.
Sure.
Which is that I give a Zoom talk every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Los Angeles time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a lot of this stuff that I was talking about earlier about happiness and expanded consciousness and all sorts of things like that. So if that appeals to you and you'd like to be part of the Zoom talk, please send me your email. The rabbi, you can send it to the rabbi. And I'd love to have you as part of the community.
So here, let me do this instead of a question, a final note from you. Practical tips for happiness, or if you want to leave it with one note.
Practical hints for happiness.
Or tips, a practical tip for, here's everyone. This is the group that most of us are truly socially isolated in a sense. Not going out, not seeing their children, friends. So would love to hear that.
Okay, here's my tip. The more that you think about other people other than yourself, and the more you try to do for other people other than yourself, the happier you're going to be.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Thank you so much. I know we value your time, and I know that a number of people have written that they do want to join that Zoom program. So I'm going to send you those emails privately.
Yes.
David, can I just mention, I'm sorry, I just want to mention this kid's name, he's a young adult, Scott Rubenstein.
Okay.
Gonna be in
I will look for that. I will look for that name.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Certainly. Okay.
And you said it's 10 a.m. Is that throughout the entire year?
Yeah, and that's 10 a.m. Los Angeles time.
Okay, perfect. So right now we're on the same time zone. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate this, and
absolutely,
we appreciate your the thoughts and knowledge that you gave to all of us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good Shabbos, everyone. Good Shabbos.
Take care. All right.